What a surprise, they're talking politics. They never do that here in France. Continuing to react to a story that actually happened on Sunday. President François Hollande's speech talking about economic recovery being underway. He was optimistic, wasn't he?
And a lot of people don't really agree with him, according to a right-leaning Le Figaro. Experts don't share Hollande's optimism, according to the front page of Le Figaro. Basically, economists and business owners are saying recovery. What recovery? Maybe we don't have the same information as Hollande. They don't believe that France is bouncing back, and they say that any recovery will take quite a long time. And in fact, Le Figaro, in their business section, is also talking about this, and they interview Pierre Gattaz. Now, he's the new president of the MEDEF, which is the largest union of employers here in France, and he says that, well, Hollande's comments were actually quite scary, and he says that Hollande says we're out of the crisis, but all we see are struggling businesses. And just to come back to their editorial in Le Figaro today, they actually liken Hollande to a witch doctor. They say that he's hoping for a self-fulfilling prophecy here, but what he really should be doing is trying to boost confidence and competitiveness, and that's going to take a lot of painful reform, according to Le Figaro.
Well, looking at the papers today, the economy is obviously the hot topic of the day. Le Monde, they're taking a look at a rather prickly government bill that's likely to grab headlines in the months to come.
That's right. Le Monde says this is a bill that the government seems to be pushing through in almost a sneaky way. At least the government is being discreet about this. This is basically a plan to reform the country's asylum laws, and this is part of a broader plan to reform the country's immigration law. Now, Le Monde points out that this is a very explosive issue here in France, and so it seems like the government is trying to use kid gloves here, putting off the debate until after the municipal elections next year. Now, the government wants to avoid this becoming a very political issue, one that could maybe be instrumentalized by certain parties in the run-up to that election. But the Le Monde points out that there will be reform on this asylum law, basically so that to bring France into line with European laws, for instance, giving asylum seekers the right to have a lawyer right at the beginning of their request. Now, there are 60,000 asylum requests each year, and only 80% are actually turned down here in France.
Okay, we're going to carry on with asylum. It's all beautifully threaded today. A woman who was recently granted asylum here in France. She's the leader of the feminist group Femen, getting a lot of attention in the press today, isn't she?
That's right. Now, her name is Inna Shevchenko. Let's take a look on the computer here. You can see a photo of her. Now, she's famous for flashing her breasts for political causes, but it's actually her face that French people are going to see a lot of whenever they get a letter, because she's inspired the artist who designed France's new stamp. Because anytime a French president is elected, he or she gets to redesign the French stamp, which represents Marianne. She's the symbol of the French Republic. And here is what the stamp is going to look like. So you can see the inspiration here. So that's, what's her name again? Ivana Shevchenko. Yeah. Now, she has had a very colorful response to this decision, which I'm not going to read to you, but you should head out to Twitter if you want to check it out. But it's also sparked a lot of outrage on the right, which and several politicians have called for this stamp to actually be boycotted. L'Opinion, which is a newspaper, a business paper here in France, also looks at this today, and they're very critical of Hollande for approving this contentious stamp because, well, remember, it was actually a group of high schoolers who voted on the stamp, but Hollande approved it, and L'Opinion says, well, he could have avoided this kind of scandal, and he's not really holding his promise of bringing all the French people together on this one.
Yeah, Marianne, she is wearing clothes, though, isn't she, Marianne?
She is wearing clothes.
Yeah, good.
She's hiding herself with her hand there.
One advantage. Now, something completely different in the Christian paper Le Croix. They're focusing on a government plan to authorise, under certain conditions, stem cell research.
That's right. It's on the front page of Le Croix, which is the Christian paper, and they look at, well, what could change in stem cell research. And in their editorial, they go into more detail. And basically, France would be going from a very restrictive system to one that authorizes stem cell research in certain cases. Now, Le Croix points out that scientists say that so far they're being penalized on the international level, not being able to participate in research. But Le Croix points out we mustn't forget that we're talking about human embryos here.
And finally, Le Monde, looking at the environmental impact of the liberalization of marijuana laws in California.
That's right. They're calling it cannabis business. And they're saying, well, this explosion of this business is actually very bad for the environment in California, whether it's deforestation or polluted water systems. The problem here is that there's kind of a legal blur. Basically, the use of medical marijuana is legal, but there are federal laws that prohibit producing and distributing it. But it's a very lucrative business that's booming. A lot of people liken it to the new gold rush. And so with this lack of clear legislation, it's really the environment that's taking a toll.
Florence, thanks very much. That's VILLEMINOT looking at the French papers today here on France 24.